Okay. Hello, my name is Nina Clark-Telfer, and today I will be presenting on decoding spoken words using local field potentials recorded from the cortical surface. Some of the ideas and images in this presentation might look familiar, and this is because I accidentally picked the paper Dr. Greger presented on in class. So please bear with me on any repeating information. So first I will be going over the general idea of the experiment. Next, I will talk about current technology that is out there. Then the experiment itself, results and conclusions from the experiment, and then finishing out with some discussion questions and a Q&A. Okay, a general overview. So first, what is the experiment? Decoding words using local field potentials. So looking at signals from different known words to build a database and using that database to categorize those words based solely on their signals. Next is the why. So people can have debilitating diseases or events such as ALS, MS, etc. that result in locked-in syndrome. So locked-in syndrome is when someone cannot move or speak. Usually the only thing they can move are their eyes, which is actually their main form of communication right now. And the goal of this experiment was to look into developing ways for better, more intuitive communication. So how was this carried out? Using micro-ECOG to measure local field potentials. These were placed in Wernicke's area in the brain and the facial motor cortex. A list of words was developed to train on, so yes, no, hungry, thirsty, etc., where the participant said one word repeatedly. Data was then collected and analyzed. This is like the LFPs, or the local field potentials, and then was classified using PCA analysis and compared. So current technology, right now there's eye tracking assists and eye control. So eye tracking assists is this one right here. It has a screen with a camera that tracks the user's eye in order to construct words and sentences. And then these two are the eye control. They're a newer technology where the user either wears a headset or eyeglasses that tracks eye movement and gives audio feedback for the user to hear the word, sentence, or phrase, whatever they've constructed. As you can see, both these require eye movement, a camera that measures eye movements, and are not as fast or intuitive as speaking, which when I say speaking, I mean the signal your brain sends out to speak a word. I don't mean like actually speaking. So experiment, the user has electrodes hooked up to Wernicke's area and the frontal motor cortex. These places were chosen because they are responsible for the comprehension of speech, language development, speech itself, and nonverbal communication. Once the user was hooked up, they would start with one of the words on the list that they would repeat. The word would produce a unique signal associated with that word, which would then be put into a database to later decode the word. This process would repeat for all 10 words in order to build up the database. After the database is built, the user would again repeatedly say a word, but this time it was classified using the database. The accuracy of the classification was then calculated. So here in the pictures, here's the electrode. It's a 4x4 array, or 16 little microelectrodes. And then you got Wernicke's area and the frontal motor cortex, and then here are the list of the 10 words. Experiment continued. This picture should look familiar because we have previously seen it in class. The first chunk, so this top one right here, is raw data of audio the user is repeating of the word yes, so yes, 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 yes. And then these next two are the spectrograms. So the top one is the frontal motor cortex, and then the bottom one, this one, C, is the Wernicke's area, and then D is the mean power and standard error of both Wernicke's and the frontal motor cortex. And you can see like the spectrograms follow, so this chunk right here follows the the last graph for the frontal motor cortex, and then over here this follows Wernicke's area on the spectrogram. So some of the results. The left over here on top is showing a spectrogram of multiple electrodes, and then two power spectra, where that data is then converted into a matrix and then used for PCA analysis, so to split up words hungry and thirsty. And then on the right is a graph showing the accuracy for classification based off the data set. So this is for, in the purple is the best 5 electrodes for the face motor cortex. The blue is the face motor cortex for 16 electrodes. Red is 16 electrodes for Wernicke's area, and then the green line is the level of chance. So if you have 2 options, 1 out of 2 is 50%, and then 1 out of 3, you get it. So for the frontal motor cortex with 16 electrodes, it showed a median performance of 83.3% for over 45 two-word combinations. And then for Wernicke's areas with 16 electrodes, it showed a median performance of 76.7% for over 45 two-word combinations. However, taking the best 5 most accurate electrodes for front motor cortex greatly improved performance with median 90% and 90% for the 45 two-word combinations and 48 for 10-word combinations. So you can see here, like the purple here, how it greatly improved versus the regular face motor cortex and the Wernicke's area. When taking the 5 best for Wernicke's area, they found that it didn't do anything, like it wasn't substantial enough of a difference, like the frontal motor cortex. So my guess as to why this might be happening is that the signals for frontal motor cortex are very similar, making it harder for the system to classify it. And by taking the best 5, you are taking the 5 that are the least similar, so therefore making it easier to classify. But I'm not entirely sure why it would be better for the frontal motor cortex versus Wernicke's area. Results continued. So on the left is classifying one word against another word and seeing how accurate it is. So did the user say yes or no, or more versus less? So it's just comparing all those. And the left matrix, the leftmost matrix, is the one for the frontal motor cortex for the 5 best electrodes. And the other one is for Wernicke's area 5. The one on the right is for Wernicke's area 5 best electrodes. And you can see, based off of the gauge over here, you can see that you want it to be light. And so the frontal motor cortex performs better because it has more white squares than dark squares in comparison. Like this is definitely darker over here than the frontal motor cortex. And then this graph on the right, it's accuracy according to the area on the microelectrode. So if you remember, the microelectrode is a 4x4 electrode, creating a 16 array. And here, like, you can tell which area of the electrode carries the most data for correctly categorizing a specific word. So for this one on no, it was the top row 3 over. It was the most accurate right there on that position on the 4x4 electrode. So conclusion, I think that this entire experiment was a success. It shows it accurately decoding speech. There definitely are some limitations, like this is an incredibly invasive procedure already, and now the electrodes must be placed in Wernicke's area, which is an absolutely critical area that you can't mess anything up in. So that's a big limitation because there's not as many opportunities to perform experiments like these. With repetition, the user can become bored when repeating words, and if they become bored, then they could change their inflection of the words or have a different type of emotion when they change the words, or when they say the words, and therefore changing the signal. And then lastly, the equipment. So you want better equipment, so it results in better signals. Something that can handle maybe a higher sampling rate in order to better closely match a unique signal. These types of experiments, this one in specific, open doors for future ideas such as classifying speech more accurately, classifying multiple words and potentially sentences, elimination of cameras to track eye movement communication, and much more intuitive communication, just faster, where you just speak a word. And so now for the discussion questions. Is there a way to do this without having to train/decode the data? So currently, I think as of right now, no. But I think that this kind of leads back to that, do we all have a universal code or baseline kind of low-level code in our brains where we can start exchanging different prosthetics or different hookups to our brain that we wouldn't have to train or decode. What are some ways to increase accuracy? So I think one of the biggest ways to increase accuracy is repetition of the word. So instead of somebody saying the word once, they would, as a response, they would say it multiple times, and then for, if they had to say it 5 times, then if it was the majority, then it would say yes, it's the word, and if it was the minority, so 2, or if it said it was the word only 2 out of the 5 times instead of 3 out of the 5 times, then it would say no, it's not this word, and then move on. And then how would you add more words to the database? So in this paper, they actually talked more about going wireless in terms of the future, and I think that was a great way to add more words into the database, because then you could potentially bring this home. And then using the eye-assisted technology, the ones where they track your eye movement, you can use that in order to add in your own words and then train it at home using the wireless capabilities. And then what are ways to construct sentence accurately? I think that you again can have repetition, although this would get really annoying and slow down the pace of the construction of speaking in general. And so I think that one way that you can do it is using another algorithm, such as one similar to Google's fill-in. So when you type in the sky is, and then you type in the letter B, it autofills into blue. And so using algorithms like that predict what you're going to say next, I think could help start to construct sentence and construct them accurately. And that's it. Thank you. And then we'll have a Q&A in class.